To In Depth with Academia, I'm Richard Price, CEO of academia.edu, and I'm really glad you're tuning in today. We've got a fascinating and quite philosophical episode ahead. So if you're sipping coffee or taking a walk, get ready to dive deep into some pretty core questions about, well, how we even know things to begin with. No small topic, right? So today we're going to talk about a paper titled Herméneutique et Epistémologie à propos du tournant épistémologique de l'Herméneutique. The author is Jacob Cleophas DEFO NZIKOU from the University of Chiang in Cameroon, and, just to be absolutely clear, as always, I'm walking through the gist of this paper for you, but I'm not personally endorsing or critiquing it, just presenting it as neutrally as possible. So, what's the core question here? Well, in pretty simple terms, the paper asks, what's the relationship between hermeneutics and epistemology? Are these two ways of knowing just totally separate, or can they work together? And why does it even matter? I mean, other than it's philosophy, which is honestly usually enough reason for me. But the reason you might care boils down to this. Hermeneutics and epistemology are ways of thinking about how we get to knowledge. How do you know what's true? When you read history or science or literature, how do you make sense of what's in front of you? That's at the heart of this debate. All right, let's break down some of the key terms, hopefully without getting tangled in technicalities. Epistemology is kind of the science of science. How do we know what we know? What makes knowledge legitimate? All that classic philosophy stuff. Hermeneutics, on the other hand, is about interpretation. How do we understand meanings, texts, history, context, that whole interpretive side of human life? The paper's big context is a shift, an epistemological turn in hermeneutics. Hermeneutics didn't used to be super interested in questions about knowledge and science, but over time it gets sort of drawn into those debates. And this is a really hot topic. Should hermeneutics just replace epistemology when it comes to how we know things, especially in the humanities? Should we view them as rivals, or is there actually a more nuanced way to think about their relationship, something between antagonism and total compatibility? The author argues, again not me, just the paper, that it's not really about one replacing or dominating the other. Instead, he suggests they're inclusive. Each has their place, but neither is the whole story. Hermeneutics, especially as it developed with folks like Dilthey and Gadamer, is kind of a corrective to classic epistemology when it comes to the humanities, history, culture, literature, all this stuff where interpretation is everything. Just to give a quick example, classic epistemology likes sciencey stuff, empirical data, logical rules, Popper's idea that a theory must be falsifiable, all that. But you can't really test the meaning of a poem or the motivations behind historical events in the same way you test, I don't know, the boiling point of water. The author suggests that hermeneutics steps in to help with exactly this gap. Hermeneutics says it's interpretation and understanding, not just explanation and proof. But, and there's always a but, the paper also warns against making this a sort of turf war. We shouldn't say hermeneutics wins and epistemology loses, or vice versa. That gets us nowhere. Each approach instead shines in its own domain. Epistemology is great for science and logic. Hermeneutics is crucial for the humanities, but both are needed for the whole picture. For listeners who aren't, philosophy nerds, what does this mean for you? Well, it really invites you to question how you approach knowledge in your own life. Are you looking for hard evidence, or are you seeking to understand context and meaning? Are both sometimes necessary? The paper is basically encouraging us to think flexibly, to recognize our own biases in seeking knowledge. That's actually just a good life skill, full stop. And here's a little digression. I once tried to get into cooking through interpreting old family recipes, and let me say, the method was basically a pinch of this, a handful of that. No amount of sciencey measurement helped me interpret until it smells right. That's hermeneutics in a nutshell right there. But yeah, I never did figure out what smells right meant, so maybe a bit of both would have been better. All right, let's wrap this up. This paper by Jacob Cleophas DEFO NZIKOU doesn't tell us that one way of knowing is right forever. It It's more like a call to see knowledge as something plural, flexible, always evolving. We need interpretation and verification, meaning and measurement. And, hey, academic research is not the gospel, it's a conversation, wonderfully unfinished. So next time you're pondering what you believe, or why a particular narrative moves you, or even how you know what you know, remember that there's more than one tool in the epistemological toolkit. Maybe more than one is what you need. Thanks for listening to In Depth with Academia, where curiosity is the only requirement. Catch you next time.